So today we're diving into a really provocative idea. The argument that for the last 250 years, the way we finance wars has created a system that quietly shapes our entire world. Let's get right into it.
Okay, picture this. It's June 18th, 1815, the Battle of Waterloo. Napoleon is facing off against Wellington, and as the source material tells it, maybe the most important player isn't even on the battlefield. Nope. He's over 200 miles away, on the London Stock Exchange. His name is Nathan Rothschild, and because of his own private network of careers, he knows something nobody else does.
And by knowing the outcome of that battle just a few crucial hours before the official news hit, Rothschild managed to pull off one of the most profitable trades in history. In today's money, that single day's profit is estimated to be, get this, $600 billion in one day.
Now, what's really fascinating here, and the core of the argument, is that this wasn't just some clever one-off trade. This moment allegedly established a blueprint, a repeatable model for generating unbelievable wealth from human conflict.
So how did he pull it off? Well, knowing Napoleon had actually lost, Rothschild walked onto the trading floor and started frantically selling his British government bonds. Everyone else saw this and panicked, thinking, oh no, Rothschild knows Britain lost. So they all started selling their bonds too, and the price just crashed. And then, right at the bottom, Rothschild quietly bought up the entire market for pennies on the dollar just before the official news of Wellington's victory arrived and sent prices to the moon.
So, you might be asking, how does one insane trade morph into a whole system? Well, this event really throws a spotlight on the financial machine that was being perfected at the time, a system that's designed to turn the temporary crisis of a war into a permanent state of national debt. It all comes down to this core concept, war financing. I mean, think about it. When a country goes to war, it needs a ton of cash, like right now, way more than it can just get from taxes. So what does it do? It borrows. And it does that by selling government bonds, which are really just IOUs, to big, wealthy banking houses. And this kicks off a very predictable cycle. Step 1, the government needs cash for war. Step 2, it issues these bonds. Step 3, the banks provide the cash, and the war gets fought. Step 4, eventually the war ends. But here's the kicker, step 5, the debt itself. It often never gets paid back. It just stays on the books, and taxpayers keep paying interest on it, sometimes forever.
And listen, Waterloo wasn't some fluke. The source material shows this exact same pattern playing out again and again throughout the 19th century. You see it in the Napoleonic Wars, the Crimean War, even the American Civil War. Huge conflicts funded by massive bond sales to powerful international bankers. And it all boils down to this one simple, powerful idea. The fighting might last for a few years, but the debt that pays for it, that becomes a permanent part of the economy.
Okay, so as we roll into the 20th century, the scale of war just explodes. We're talking industrialized warfare, and the amount of money needed was beyond anything anyone had ever seen. The system had to get bigger too. It had to evolve from relying on private banks to using the incredible power of central banks.
And you can see this shift so clearly when you compare the two world wars. In World War I, it was still mostly private banks, like JP Morgan, putting the deals together. But by World War II, everything had changed. Central banks, like the US Federal Reserve, just started creating money out of thin air to buy their own government's war bonds. They were essentially printing the money to fund the war.
And the result of this? Absolutely explosive. Just look at the US federal debt. It increased by 600% in just 5 years. That's what happens when a central bank turns on the money printer to pay for a war.
Then, after the war, the entire global financial system gets a reboot, basically to lock all this in place. The source points to the Bretton Woods Agreement, which did a lot of things, but crucially, it made the US dollar the world's official reserve currency. Why does that matter? Because now, all those massive war debts had to be paid back in dollars, which created a permanent worldwide demand for US currency, and you guessed it, US.
All right, so let's fast forward. How does this system look in our lifetime? The pattern continues, but believe me, the numbers just get bigger and bigger.
According to the source material, if you add up the total cost of the War on Terror from 2001 to 2021, and you include all the long-term stuff like veteran care and interest payments, you get to the staggering number, $8 trillion, all of it financed with debt.
And here we are again with that same familiar refrain. The major combat missions are over, the troops are home, but that $8 trillion borrowed to pay for it all? That's still on the books, and the interest meter is running every single day.
So, who actually owns all this debt today? This chart gives us a pretty good idea. Of the roughly $36 trillion in U.S. debt, a big chunk is held by foreign governments like China and Japan. Another huge piece is actually owned by the Federal Reserve itself. And the rest is held by domestic investors. Banks, pension funds, maybe even you.
Which, of course, leads to the trillion-dollar question. Literally, the U.S. government now pays over $1 trillion a year just in interest payments. So where does all that money go?
Well, the answer is simple. It goes to the bondholders. Those massive interest payments, funded by our tax dollars, flow directly to the people and institutions we just saw. Big banks, foreign countries, the Fed, pension funds, and other investors who hold U.S. bonds. It's a gigantic, ongoing transfer of wealth.
Now, I know this can all seem super abstract, trillions of dollars, central banking, global finance. But the argument here is that this system has a very real, very direct impact on your wallet.
So let's break down exactly how this hits home. First, your taxes are paying interest on debt from wars that were fought decades, even generations ago. Second, when central banks create money to finance all this, it can cause inflation, which eats away at the value of your savings. The source also argues it creates a massive wealth transfer from regular taxpayers to the asset owners who hold the bonds. And finally, all this government borrowing can crowd out private investment that might have gone to starting new businesses and creating jobs. But here's the most critical point. According to the source material, this whole setup creates a powerful built-in incentive for conflict. Think about it. When a war is financed with debt, the defense contractors who make the weapons profit, and the banks that arrange the loans also profit. This creates what some have called a military-industrial financial complex, a system that feeds on itself.
And because this system is so baked in, the source argues that the playbook for the next major conflict is already written. A crisis will happen, the government will borrow trillions, the war will be fought, and the debt, well, that'll get passed down to our kids and grandkids to pay the interest on.
And that leaves us with one final, really provocative question based on the argument we've just walked through. When you look at a system that's been built over 250 years, a system where incredible profit is made from debt-financed conflict, does it have a natural incentive for peace or for the very conflicts that keep the whole machine running?